We are in the midst of a series this month on Sunday nights on attitudes. We looked last week at our attitude towards life circumstances. We talked about rejoicing, how important that was, and how we should rejoice in the midst of whatever life throws our way. But tonight we want to talk about our attitudes towards our duty. Do what you can. That's our attitude. Our attitude last week was rejoice. Our attitude this week is do what you can. Our attitude next week, we're going to talk about our relationship with our brothers and sisters in Christ, and that is, of course, love. And then we have one more with regards to our attitude towards God, and that's faith or trust in God. An attitude is a state of mind or disposition towards someone or something. That's how we defined it last week. And when you think about life, you have to understand that we all have many duties in life. We have many responsibilities. We all live really a multifaceted life, but we all have, as we'll talk about in just a second, but we all have duties. Those duties are wide-ranging. Those duties, as we'll see in just a few minutes, really cover a vast amount of areas, and we all have them. But within those duties are responsibilities. These are things that are our responsibilities. And sometimes, especially in group settings, especially in a church setting, folks like to say, it's not my responsibility, it's their responsibility. It's your responsibility, it's yours. And the reality of it is that it's all of our responsibilities. Now, yes, it is true. Elders have certain responsibilities. Preachers have certain responsibilities. Deacons are assigned certain responsibilities. But invariably, we all have responsibilities within the local church. We need to pitch in. We need to say, okay, what can I do? And that's important. And as we go through tonight, and as I go through tonight, I'm not going to say this a lot, so understand it here at the front end. We all have different talents. We all have different abilities. And not all of us can do the same thing. That's the makeup of the church. That's the beauty of all of us being the church, is the fact that we do have different talents and different abilities. And we're limited. Health limits us. Age limits us. Energy limits us. A lot of things limit us. And so when we take this, don't say, oh, the preacher, Brent, he beat on me tonight. I got to do more. We understand that you do what you can do, but that's the point. Do what you can do. That's what we need to do. That's our attitude towards our duties. Well, we have to ask ourselves, in what areas do we have duties? Because as we said, we all live multifaceted lives. I'll just take me, for instance. I could take you, but I could take me. Every day I live from the standpoint of a husband to a wife, as a preacher to a congregation, as a minister to all of you, sometimes as a friend to others, a counselor to others. Times I'm a gardener. I keep the flowers up. Maybe a little house cleaning if Suzanne orders me to. Sometimes I'm the help in the kitchen. Can you reach this? Get this down for me. I need this. And you watch what I'm doing so you can do this later. But okay, yes, ma'am. Do those things and many others. But the same is true with you. Sometimes I'm a brother to a sister, to my sister. We run those things, father to son, and so we're all multifaceted in our lives, and that comes within a day's time. But tonight, our responsibilities, while we're going to look at various areas, understand too that this is within the confines, in many ways, also of the church itself. But where do our duties lie? Well, first of all, how about church? What's our responsibilities with regards to church? Well, let's think about what's the purpose of the church. We've got to remember that the purpose of the church is to basically grow, to spread the message, to carry forth the message, to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, Mark 16, verse 15. That's our responsibility. That's what God wants us to do. Now, admittedly, the vehicle to get us there is that which everybody is searching for and very difficult to find. And it varies with people. It varies from the standpoint of how do you attract people and how are you going to get people and so forth and so on. But the responsibilities within the church is, okay, what can we do to help the church grow? What can we do to spread the borders of the kingdom? What can we do to fulfill the mission which God has given to us to take forth the gospel? We also have duties with regards to brethren. What's my responsibility to the brethren? What am I to do? We remember, according to Romans chapter 14 and verse 19, that we are to be peaceable people. Let us pursue peace, Paul says. Let us pursue all things that make for peace. That's important. That's part of what we do in the church. Why? Because we are to be individuals, according to what Paul wrote to the church of Ephesus, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. I have, and you have, we all have a responsibility to each other. Now, we could spend time talking about all the different one another passages in the New Testament. Greet one another, love one another, use hospitality one towards another, bear one another's burdens. All of these hold true within the body of Christ. But we, being brethren, maintain the unity within the brotherhood, but from the standpoint of congregation, but also to be individuals that not only maintain that unity, but individuals that seek for what we can do to help encourage, to help build up, to help strengthen our brethren. In Acts chapter 14, verse 22, Paul and Barnabas had gone, and they had gone on their first missionary journey, and man, they had gone to Lystra, they'd gone to Derbe, they'd gone to Iconium, and they hit basically a turning around point. And they went back. And they went back to Lystra, and went back to Derbe, and went back to Iconium. And it says they went back strengthening and confirming the brethren. They went back to make sure that the brethren were strong. Now, think about it. These are folks that, if you will, for the most part, they're converted. They're converted, some maybe from heathenism, but also from Jewish backgrounds and things of that nature, other teachings. And so consequently, they needed strengthening. And Paul said, or rather Luke said, with regards to Paul and Barnabas, they went back, strengthening and confirming. That's part of our ministry. Strengthening and confirming. That's part of what we do with regards to the membership committee. But it's a responsibility that we all have. How about Acts chapter 11, verse 29? They heard that there were poor saints needing help. So what did they begin to do? Take a collection for the brethren. That's a responsibility. We have a responsibility with regards to our brethren. We have a responsibility towards God. We are stewards, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 4. We're stewards. Now, what's a steward? Well, a steward is one that has been given something from a standpoint of, here, you're in charge of this. You take care of this. If I were to give you this remote and say, okay, here, you take care of this till next week, till next Sunday. That's when I'm going to need it again, because I won't be here Wednesday night. But I'm going to need it Sunday. So you take care of this till next Sunday. You become a steward of this. With regards to God, Paul says, let every man look at us as servant of Christ, as steward of the ministry of God. Servant, steward, all in one verse. Impactful, you might say. Yes, why? Because that's my responsibility to God. God has entrusted me, and he has entrusted you with his ministry. How is the church going to move forward? We often sit and think, and preachers, we sit and think and talk about what's going to happen in the future with regards to the church. And we talk about the graying of the church and the church getting older and what's going to happen to the church. And yes, there are great concerns among us, and there should be. And yet at the same time, too, we have to understand, okay, my responsibility is to my church, but it's to my brethren, and it's to my God. What can I do for God? How can I help my God? Well, you might say, I can't do anything to God. Oh, yes, you can. You carry out his responsibilities. For he has put us in charge, according to 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 10. Peter says there that each one of us, as each one of us has received the gift, even so minister the same one to another. As you have received the gift, minister the same one towards another. We have that responsibility. God says, here you go. Here it is. It's yours. Then we also have a responsibility towards our family. Family is important, isn't it? And like you say, within a family, you can play a different role. It's kind of interesting when you stop and think about it. Fathers have a responsibility to raise children in the way they should go, according to Ephesians chapter 6. Mothers have a role as well. Mothers have a valuable role within the church. And it talks about, in Titus chapter 2, it talks about the older women to teach the younger women to be discreet, chaste, keepers of the home, good, sober, vigilant, to be good ladies. Mothers are such. We owe our mothers a great deal. And then within that passage of Titus 2, it tells grandparents, basically, because it tells the older women teach the younger women, and it tells the older men to be individuals that are good, honest individuals that are truly valuable servants within the kingdom of God, of course. So you have husband and wife, you have mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, 1 Peter chapter 3, husbands and wives, husbands to love the wives, as Paul said in Ephesians 5, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Therein lies the role, there lies the duty. Husbands, love your wives, and that becomes reciprocal. And so we have a responsibility then within the family, but we also have a responsibility to the world. Seemingly as strange as that might be, we have a responsibility to the world. Paul said it this way, let every soul be subject to the higher powers that be. For there is no other power except God or to be subject to those powers. We may not like all the laws of the land, and there are many. There are many laws with regards to the law of the land. But our responsibility is to be good citizens. I may not agree with every politician. Matter of fact, let me tell you now, I don't agree with every politician. And I may even sometimes close my eyes and hold my nose when I vote for individuals. But yet I still have a responsibility to obey the laws of the land, to obey the laws as have been constructed, to be a citizen that as long as those laws do not violate God's law, that I have a responsibility to this world to be a good citizen. Now, that can also parlay itself into another idea. That is taking care of this world. That's something that really is not talked about much. You don't see many sermons. You don't hear many sermons on the idea of taking care of the land. And we all have our different ideas about how that's done. You know, evidently there's a lot more property here, land here, than we think, because the cicadas were terrible when they come out of dirt. They didn't fly in. They came out of the dirt that was here, and there was a lot of them. We have a responsibility to take care of the property, take care of the land. We've been stewards of that. So you can see, we have a lot of different areas in which you and I have duties. Okay. Well, if our attitude is to do my share, if my attitude towards all these responsibilities, all these areas of duties is to do what I can, then really how am I going to have the right attitude that I need? That's the remainder of the lesson this evening. And that's what I want to spend at least just a few minutes on this evening as we talk about this subject. Thinking and remembering that my attitudes, my state of mind or disposition, I have to understand that when I want to and I'm willing to do my share, I have to be willing. We have to remember that this is voluntary. One of the things that was kind of interesting, one of the elders at Pomona, he's passed away now, but sometimes when we call our deacons together, we would talk to them, the elders and I would talk to the deacons. They would begin to talk about, well, this won't happen and this won't do and these people won't do and do-da, do-da, do-da. And one of our elders would always say, this is a voluntary army. We can't make folks do. We can ask them to do. We can hope that they'll do. We can pray for them that they'll do it. But we have to understand it's voluntary army. We have to be willing. I want to do my duty. I want to do my share. I want to do it willingly. Here's the general standard within the church. Well, y'all gonna have something down there, aren't you? Now you're a member. This is what I hear from members. Y'all gonna have something down there. Well, we are. You are we, and you are us. Yes, we are. Well, okay. All right. Now, what was it? Well, you tell them. Well, okay. Well, y'all will do a good job with that. No, we will do a good job with that. Well, I don't. That announcement just didn't make sense to me. I didn't hear it all. And, I can't do everything. Yes, that's right. You got to do what you can do. See, sometimes you have to understand. You have to be willing. And sometimes you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone and your box. I'm not comfortable doing that. Gotcha. Not comfortable doing it. How about trying it anyway? How did you find out whatever it is that you like to eat, Somebody told you, here, eat it, right? Now, I can tell you my wife does not like olives. And I can tell you how I know that is because when we were still dating, my family believes in eating olives. And so I gave my wife, I plopped one in her mouth. She was not my wife at the time. And thankfully, when she spit it out at me, thinking that it was, what was it, a pickle? A grape, yes, thinking it was a grape. And she let it fly. She did not hold it against me. But notice and think about the fact that we have folks and we have to figure out, okay, what can you do? What do you like to do? Sometimes, how do you get out of that box? You get out of that box by trying something. Now, she doesn't like olives, but she's at least tried them. We have to be willing. And we have to understand that if we're going to do our share, we have to be willing to do things. And we have to understand in that willingness that we allow ourselves to look and find things that are not necessarily announced from the pulpit, not necessarily brought up in a committee meeting or brought up in a business meeting. You want to be successful in life? Here's the key to success. The key to success is find a need and fill it. That's success. Find a need. How have folks gotten rich through the years? They found a need. I mean, even in the 70s, there's some folks that figured out pet rocks and mood rings were something that were just fantastic, and people bought them. Why? They found a need. They found a niche, if you will. They found a need. They sold them, yes. Then they were a passing fad. By the way, I got Beanie Babies. If anybody wants one, we'll give them free. That was a fad. We stopped at every Cracker Barrel we could to find Beanie Babies. You might say, what does that have to do with being willing? Well, think about it. Find a need and fill it. In the church, find a need. Well, I don't know if that's a need. Well, see, explore, try, test it out. Secondly, in doing my share, unselfish. I have to be unselfish. It's not all about me, and nor is it about my glory. Paul talked about in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 15, I will gladly spend and be spent for you, and the more I love you, he says, and sort of paraphrase there, he says, the less I'm loved. But then he also said in Philippians chapter 2, verse 17, he told the church of Philippi that he would be more than happy to be poured out as a drink offering for them. In other words, I'm willing at my expense, if I can help you, I'm willing to do what I can, even at my expense. Even though I may come up short in time, I may come up short in money, I may come up short doing the best that I can do, but I'm willing to do. You see, most of us are selfish. This only affects me. That's all I'm willing to do. What affects me? That doesn't affect me, so that's somebody else's duty. No, we have to be unselfish in our time, in our efforts, in what we do. Paul says, I'm willing to give myself for you. And that needs to be the attitude that we have. William Booth, who started Salvation Army, and I don't agree with the tenets of Salvation Army, but that's for you to explore on your own. But William Booth was one time asked, he said, what's a good word? And Booth simply said, others. Others is what's important. That's a great way of starting. To have the right attitude with regards to my duty, which I'm going to do what I can do, I need to be unselfish. But thirdly, I need to understand that this service needs to be continuous. Can't start and then not finish. Now, sometimes the job may not be finished, but we may be finished. In other words, we've done all we can do. We've carried the ball as far as we can carry it. We have ministered as far as we can minister. We can't do much more. Whatever that reason for stopping is. And when we get to that point, here's what we need to do. Go tell somebody. Hey, I have done this, I have done that, and that's as far as I can go. But I think you can carry it a little bit further. I think you can do it. I'll be willing to help. I'll be willing to be a resource. But we need to understand that when we stop it, we don't just stop and walk away. Too many times in the church, here's what happens. Somebody does something. Somebody takes on a good work, and I mean they're good at it. And they either get burnt out or they get frustrated or get tired or they just things in life come upon them and it just stops them. And they never tell anybody. And 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, all of a sudden we realize, this hole has been made, not because they didn't do it, but because they've stopped. And then by the time we get a hold of them and reach out and try not to embarrass them and ask them what's going on, they say, well, so-and-so said I shouldn't do this, or so-and-so didn't like it. Our work, our ministry is just that. It is to be continuous. We are to be untiring in our work. We are to be individuals that strive to keep on doing what we're supposed to do. For as we've received that ministry, we're to use it. Our talents are to be used. We're to be individuals, though, that are continuous in our duty. Next, responsibly. If I'm going to do my duty, I must do it responsibly. It's up to me. It's not up to somebody else. It's up to me. I might ask for help. I might ask for assistance. I might ask for guidance. But let me do it responsibly. Let me take on the task. Let me use the talents that I have. And let me use them according to what God has given me. Notice and remember what Peter wrote in 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 11. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. If any man ministers, let him minister. Do what? Let him minister. He's got a responsibility. We're responsible. In the church, if we're going to do our duty, do our share, our attitude needs to be, I'm responsible. Not everybody else. It's me. It's not the preacher. It's not the elders. It's not the song leader. It's not the Bible school teacher. It's me. Now, do all those folks have responsibilities? Absolutely. Can they help you? Sure. Sometimes they need help as well. But we need to take on the idea of doing our duty responsibly. Next, doing it completely. Doing it to the very best of our ability. Finishing the task at hand. That's a challenge, isn't it? Jesus, in John 17, right before he died on the cross, in verse 4, he says, I've finished the work which you gave me. That was his prayer to God. It's interesting that right at the beginning of that prayer, right towards the beginning of that prayer, what does he tell God? He says, I've finished the work. I've completed exactly what you have told me to do. And then John 19, he's hanging on the cross. In some of his last moments while hanging upon the cross, what did he say? It is finished. I've done the best I can do. I've run the race, Paul said. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. We complete. When does our ministry end? When we pass away. Because you see, one of the things we have to remember is that even when we get to the point where we can't go, we can still do. You might say, preacher, I don't get that. I believe, and I know you believe, in the power of prayer. I can't go anymore. You can pray. You can pray for those that can go. You can pray for those that do. Even a shut-in can be involved in a great ministry. Prayer. Pray. So if I'm going to do my share, I also need to have the attitude of doing it tenderly. Doing what I'm supposed to do, but doing it tenderly. Paul said in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32, to be kind one to another, tender-hearted. We need to be tender-hearted. This world has gotten cold, in my opinion. Now, you may say, preacher, you're wrong and you're negative and you're bad and you're terrible and you need to not have that sort of attitude. But I think you need to think about the world that we live in now has become a very isolationist sort of philosophy. I can sit in my home and I can do almost everything. I mean, I can sit at my home and I can order things. I can sit at my home and I can be entertained. I can sit at my home and I don't have to be involved in anybody's lives. And if I want to tell them how bad they stink, I can type that on my computer on my different accounts and they'll get it and it'll be all right. We need to stop and think about the other person's feelings. We need to stop and think about what's going on in their life. We need to stop and think about them. But tenderhearted is not just thinking about them, but tenderhearted is also the idea of being moved with compassion. Being an individual that's heart is open and easily moved by the needs, the feelings, the difficulties of others. That's our attitude. That's our attitude towards doing our duties. We all have different duties. Why? Because we have different talents, different abilities, different roles. But our attitude needs to be, what can I do? Because I'm going to do what I can. Jesus said the same thing in Luke 17th chapter in verse 10, that basically when we've done all that we can do, that's what we're going to say. I have done that which is my duty to do. And that's, I believe, how the Lord's going to look at us. I've done all that I can do, Lord. I've done what was my duty, and I realized I had duty with regards to the world. I had duty with regards to the brethren. I had duties with regards to the church. I had duties with regards to my family, and I did all that I could do. That's important. The year was 17. Let me make sure of the right year. The year was 1780 in Connecticut. What was called a dark day in Connecticut. Now, it's since been revealed and believed that what happened is that there was a terrible forest fire up in Canada, and it blew the clouds and the smoke and all down on Connecticut. But it was so dark in the middle of the day that it was just dark. It was like dark. The birds had gone to roost. People were going in. Candles were being lit. The House of Representatives for the state of Connecticut had adjourned, and the council that was meeting wanted to adjourn as well. But there was a man there by the name of Colonel Abraham Davenport. Davenport said, no, we are not adjourning. He says, this is the way I figure it. He says, if this is the coming of the Lord, if this is the end, he said, then I want to be found doing my duty. He says, if it's not, he said, what difference does it matter? But he says, if it's the end, if the Lord is coming, I want to be found by the Lord doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It needs to be our attitude. That I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Whereas the They found out the lady that anointed Jesus in Mark chapter 14. The old preacher sermon is do what you can with what you have where you are. That she certainly did, didn't she? When they wanted to stop her, Jesus said, oh no, let her go on. Let her perform her ministry. Why? Because she was doing what she could with what she had. And that should be our attitude as well. This evening, as you think about your attitude and you think about your responsibilities and your duty, one of the greatest responsibilities and greatest duties you have is to obey the gospel, to be a New Testament child of God, and to live faithfully. And if we can help you in either of those areas, won't you come? All together we stand and sing.